Hello, maybe you know this guy. His name is Yuri Boyka, a famous martial arts master who has just been released from the most dangerous prison in Russia. He is ready to conquer the world of mixed martial arts. But even in his worst nightmares, he could not imagine what he will have to go through on the path to worldwide fame. Yuri Boyka now trains and performs in Kiev. He spent 10 years in strict confinement and participated in hundreds of underground fights to earn his freedom. Any other person would have given up their dreams a long time ago, but Yuri persisted. He dreams of real titles, not prison. Meanwhile, in the Black Hills where the fighter served and fought, a new opponent appears, a prisoner nicknamed Nightmare. One day, between two fights, Yuri Boyka caves in to make donations to the local church, which was actually built thanks to him. The fighter tries to find salvation in religion, but the priest doubts his life's path. Yuri disagrees, believing that the Almighty has given him a unique gift, and it would be a sin not to use it. Therefore, he continues to train. Soon, his manager Kirill finds him an opportunity for a fight. This time, it's not underground fights but a real competitive fight that can earn him a spot in the European Mixed Martial Arts Championship. With his manager as his companion, Yuri travels to Budapest. He sets his sights on a spectacular victory, especially since the front rows are reserved for scouts who select the best athletes to cooperate with. Note: the translation has been edited for clarity and readability. The fight begins, and from the first few seconds, it becomes clear that Yuri's opponent is a skilled athlete who masters his art. Yuri can barely dodge his skilled strikes, and he's almost hit several times. However, this opponent provokes Yuri to the point where he completely unleashes himself and strikes him in the chest and head. The opponent loses his mouthguard and can barely stand on his feet afterward. Yuri struts in front of the audience, celebrating his victory. But the opponent gets up despite everything. That's when all of Yuri's rage hits him like a ton of bricks. Yuri triumphs. After the fight, the scouts approach him and say they haven't seen such an impressive fight in a long time. They want to see Yuri again in Budapest and invite him to join the new tournament in 2 weeks. Yuri promptly accepts, and Kirill gives him his share of the prize money. As Yuri leaves the arena, he sees his opponent being taken away on a stretcher. He learns that the guy is in critical condition and needs to go to the emergency room. Yuri is scared and immediately remembers what the priest had told him a few days before the fight. The next morning, he wakes up from a nightmare and goes straight to the gym where Kirill is already waiting for him. Yuri starts asking him what happened to yesterday's opponent. His manager doesn't understand why Yuri wants to know since he already won the fight, but in the end, he tells him the truth that the opponent died. Yuri doesn't want to believe it. He asks Kirill for the name of the opponent. Apparently, the person's name is Victor, and he comes from Drovny, a city in Russia. The manager advises Yuri to forget about this and move forward. After all fighters know the risks when they step into the ring. But Yuri still doesn't want to follow his advice. After seeing a photo of Victor and his wife, he firmly decides to go to Russia to redeem himself. Even the fact that he is a fugitive criminal who escaped from prison through underground fights doesn't deter him. Yuri orders his assistant to create fake documents for him and specifies that he won't accept any excuses. While Yuri arrives in Russia, Victor's funeral takes place in the small town of Drovny. A man approaches the fighter's widow and informs her that her husband's death does not exempt her from paying a certain debt, and now it is the widow's responsibility to take care of it. Meanwhile, Yuri crosses the Russian border with a fake passport. He arrives at a hotel and immediately goes to the youth center where Victor's widow works. However, they don't have time to talk as people come to pick up the daughter in a black car and take her somewhere. Yuri manages to extract information from a guard who tells him that the widow has been taken to her second mysterious job. Yuri goes to the address and discovers that it's a nightclub where mixed martial arts fights take place in the evening. He stands at the door and watches the undefeated club champion, Igor Casimir, in a fight. Yuri is furious at the arrogant behavior of the fighter, who acts as if the ring belongs to him and uses dirty tactics against his opponents. But Yuri gets distracted by something else. He sees that Victor's widow works there as a waitress. However, Yuri doesn't have time to talk to the widow as the bouncers notice them and escort him outside. They say that the girl belongs to their boss and that Yuri has no right to approach her. The guys provoke Yuri, and in the blink of an eye, he knocks them down to the ground like sacks of potatoes. A man, the same one as before, comes out of the opposite building and introduces himself as Prince. He applauds Yuri for the spectacle he just witnessed and informs him that he owns the nightclub. The local crime boss even offers his ring to Yuri, but Yuri refuses the offer, stating that he is here to speak to Alma, the waitress. The boss firmly refuses and orders his guys to keep an eye on Yuri, but the threats of the local gangster do not intimidate Yuri. The next day, Yuri returns to Alma's workplace, and after knocking out Zorob's henchman, he enters inside. At first, he hesitates to tell the truth to the widow, expressing only his condolences and giving Alma a letter from her late husband. But when she starts wondering how they know each other, Yuri tells her what happened. Yuri asks if there's anything he can do for Alma, and she responds that the only thing she needs is for her husband to come back from the dead. She refuses the money Yuri offers, saying that it's tainted with blood, and then she calls him a murderer. Meanwhile, new fighters are brought to Zorob's club, but the mafia boss doesn't like them. He is looking for a true champion who would make the local fights real spectacles, and he doesn't have to wait long. Yuri appears at the club's door. Yuri offers Zorob a deal. If he fights in his ring, the mobster will leave Alma alone. They agree on 3 matches, but on the condition that Yuri fights the club's main champion. Yuri accepts and says he will do the 3 fights in the following week because he has no intention of staying here. There's only one problem. Zorob calls Yuri by his real name out loud, demonstrating that he can't escape his trackers even with fake documents. After this conversation, Yuri calls Kirill and tells him that he will have to stay for another week. The manager tries to dissuade him, but Yuri is adamant. He orders his assistant to change the ticket for a different date. The next day, Alma waits for Yuri outside the hotel. She tells him that she didn't ask for his help and demands that he leave her alone. The widow of Victor mistakenly believes that Yuri came here to win her as if she were some kind of prize. But Yuri makes it clear to her that he's not interested in her. He just wants to redeem himself. The day of the first match arrives. While the opponents prepare for the fight, Zorob is happy to watch everything from his VIP space. Yuri's opponent turns out to be stronger than expected, but Yuri quickly regains his composure to overpower him. In the end, he puts the opponent on his shoulder blades and grabs him by the throat. While resting after the fight, Alma brings him water. Yuri asks the young woman if there is a nearby gym because he can't go to Zorob's gym since the audience is hostile. Alma says they can train at her place. The next day, Yuri goes to the youth center where he used to train for competitions, and they train there. The time for the second match arrives, and the announcer declares that Yuri Boyka, already known to the public, will fight against the local celebrities, the Ozerov brothers. Yuri learns that he will have to fight against 2 people, something he wasn't aware of, but he still accepts. It takes some time for Yuri to adjust to a match between 2 opponents, but he quickly takes the initiative and swiftly dominates the 2 brothers. However, the fight continues, and as soon as Yuri deals with one of the Ozerovs, the other is already attacking from behind. At one point, one of the opponents severely injures Yuri's lower back. At that moment, Yuri can barely find the strength to continue, but when he sees Alma's face in the crowd, he manages to eliminate both opponents with the last bit of willpower he has left. Yuri leaves the ring limping, and the entire audience chants his name. Victor's wife looks at him with completely different eyes. Another day approaches, and Zorob receives a police officer in his office, from whom he demands the delivery of the fighter named Nightmare from Black Hills Prison. The police officer initially refuses because he has already come close to losing his job due to a similar affair, but Zorob offers him an enticing deal. He says that the lieutenant will not only receive money but also a fugitive criminal, Yuri Boyka, who is completely unaware of what awaits him. After the fight, Yuri goes to train, and Alma comes to see the injured Yuri. She offers to apply a special decoction on his back, but when Yuri asks why she doesn't leave this town, the woman gets offended and stops what she's doing. Alma explains that this center is her and her late husband's biggest dream, and they borrowed money from Zorob to fulfill this center and the children who come here. It would be total madness for her to leave. After learning that Yuri regularly visits Alma's workplace, Zorob becomes jealous. He goes to see her and starts inciting her against Yuri. Kirill calls Yuri to tell him that all of Budapest is covered with posters with his name, and he is expected to join the competitions as soon as possible. Yuri promises that he will be at the bus stop at 9 o'clock that evening. As soon as he enters his hotel room, he sees an unexpected person. Alma wants to uncover the whole truth about what happened when her husband died. She is ready to hear the truth, whether it was an accident or not. Yuri tells his story. He says that he did terrible things for which he went to prison for a long time. He was a bad man full of hatred until he found God. Yuri fought hundreds of times in the most abominable arenas and prison halls. But when God finally gave him a chance to prove to the whole world that he was worth something, Yuri stopped seeing a person in front of him in the ring. For him, Victor was just an obstacle on the path to his dearest dream. Yuri knows that nothing will be enough to compensate for the loss of Alma, but he regrets what he did with all his heart. Yuri finally enters the ring against his last opponent, Igor Casimir. It is a fierce battle, and both fighters are fighting ferociously. However, the opponent hits very hard, inflicting even more injuries to Yuri's already painful lower back. He doesn't hold back from delivering blows to the groin. Yuri is almost giving up, and Casimir is already starting to celebrate his victory proudly. But Yuri once again catches Alma's gaze in the crowd, and he rises with renewed vigor. He becomes fierce and inflicts a series of devastating blows to his opponent's vulnerable spot. Casimir is completely lost, and Yuri easily knocks him down with a powerful kick. Yuri leaves the ring surrounded by his fans, thinking it's over for him here and that he can now go to Budapest for the competition of his dreams. But Zorab has other plans. He pretends to have misunderstood and says they agreed on 3 fights and another one with the champion, and Casimir is not a champion, just a local clown. Yuri is furious, but he is given an ultimatum. Either he enters the ring again or Alma remains the owner of Zorab forever. Zorab announces the main fight of the evening, Yuri, the victorious one, against a thug who came from prison. Yuri sees his opponent and can't believe his eyes. Nightmare is twice his size. Zorab has made Alma sit next to him in the VIP area, and she is panicking. The fight starts, and in the first minute, Yuri loses his mouthguard and falls. Everyone thinks he's been knocked out, and they're already celebrating Nightmare's victory. But Yuri doesn't give up. He has a few seconds left to get up and continue the fight. He sees Alma worried and Zorab laughing. Yuri gathers his last bit of strength. He is severely injured in the lower back, but despite that, he keeps fighting, overcoming the pain. His opponent is visibly exhausted and starting to falter. Yuri strikes Nightmare with chest shots and wrestles with him on the ground, applying a painful technique to finally defeat him. Yuri rejoices, not suspecting that guys with baseball bats are already waiting for him at the exit. At the last moment, he sees Zorab grabbing Alma and dragging her out of the VIP area. But Yuri doesn't have time to stop the villain because Zorab's men are holding him back. The widow of Victor sees Yuri's body before leaving and screams, thinking he's dead. People rush out in panic, thinking there's a death, but they don't hand Yuri over to the police. So he gets up and fights everyone. Suddenly, he gets shot by another person from the mafia. Zorab hears a gunshot from his office, grabs a weapon, and starts heading out of the venue with Alma under his arm. On the way, he encounters Yuri, who inflicts several more injuries on him because Yuri is faster. He kills him next to the car. Alma and Yuri are alone. She tells him that he needs to see a doctor right away, but he doesn't even want to listen. Yuri admits that he would have never had the courage to ask her before, but now he implores her forgiveness. Before hearing those cherished words, Yuri is captured by the police. He is taken back to Black Hills. 6 months later, Alma visits him for the first time. She apologizes for not coming earlier. She wasn't ready. At the beginning, when they first met, Alma was still too angry with Yuri, but he showed her that there was still goodness in him. The widow of Victor thanks him for giving her back her freedom and dignity, and she finally utters those long-awaited words, "I forgive you." And that's how Yuri Boyka's misadventures end.